Now, I just wanted to say that we are absolutely delighted that the Prime Minister is joining us today. We know him well from his time as London Mayor, and a wonderfully pro-enterprise mayor he was too. We are enjoying getting to know him again in his new role, and we very much look forward to hearing what he has to say the first time on a CBI stage for a while. Could you please join me in welcoming our Prime Minister, Boris Johnson.
Yeah.
From this side.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Carolyn. It's great to be here this morning in this hotel, which I think I gave planning permission. I know I gave planning permission for the construction of this hotel. I'm honoured to be here with you all at the CBI because I know what you've all achieved in business, and I know how difficult it is. Because when I first left university, my ambition was to be a manufacturer, an industrialist, an exporter, and I saw what I thought was a market opportunity in kitchen tiles, beautiful handmade kitchen tiles with designs in bas relief of fruit, of the kind you see behind sinks or stoves, I think called splashback kitchen tiles. And together with a couple of friends, we found a place to make them, and we got some lovely designs of cherries and bananas and things in bas relief. And we even found a special government advisor who is apparently an expert in helping you set up tile-making businesses. And we gave him as much money as we could find, and he wrote some splendid advice, basically informing us that the venture was doomed. And we never really recovered our morale. I went on to do other things. But I'm lost in admiration as a result of that experience for all those who have made a fantastic success of their businesses and their industries. And industry today is doing extraordinary things in this country, dominating 21st century sectors from batteries to bioscience, with record in investments, record exports, tea to India. You know the story. Tea to India, cake to France, TV aerials to Korea, boomerangs to Australia. We export music around the world. Jason Donovan, they told me, we export the music of Jason Donovan to North Korea. And under this government, we have, of course, an economy that has grown for the last 9 years, is 20% bigger than it was in 2010. Last week, it was announced that the rate of unemployment has fallen to the lowest level since 1974. And yet, there is something very frustrating about this recitation of triumphs, because it is only half the story of an economy that is still not achieving what it could. Like a Formula One supercar, a super green supercar, of a kind in which this country, of course, excels, that is only firing on half its cylinders, with so much more natural energy waiting to be unleashed. And the country is being held back, let's be clear, by politics and by a parliament that for the last 3.5 years has simply failed to discharge its basic promise, made umpteen times, to honour the mandate of the people and deliver Brexit. And that is why we must have this election now. I don't want an election in December under normal circumstances. Nobody does. But we have no choice. We must get Brexit done. We have to clear this parliamentary blockage in this dino rod election, because first of all, we're Democrats. There are millions of people who want to get Brexit done because they voted leave and they believe that the EU has evolved very substantially away from what people voted for in 1975. And then there are also huge numbers of people who may have voted Remain, and I include distinguished luminaries of the CBI amongst them, but who just want to respect the result of the referendum. And after 3.5 years, they think, we think, I think, it's time for the paralysis to end. And we have to get Brexit done because it's the best thing for our national mood. and the best thing to take our country forward. And by the way, it's the best thing for the economy, because the worst thing now is the continuing economic uncertainty. People waiting to take on new staff or invest in property or just to invest in this country. The UK attracts phenomenal inward investment, 92 billion last year, more than any other country in Europe. But there's now a pent-up tidal wave of investment that could come to this country from people who see all our natural advantages. Great time zone, fantastic skills, the right language, greatest universities on earth. And I know you'll have to forgive me for making political points in this speech. I wouldn't intrude being quite so political in the sanctity of a CBI speech, but this is an election campaign, ladies and gentlemen, so I've got to make no bones about it. One of the advantages of voting Conservative in this election is that we can and will get it done, and get it done in a matter of weeks. We have a deal that is ready to go. Just add hot water, stir in pot. It's there. The skeptics said that it couldn't be done, and they were wrong. They said we'd never get a great new deal of the kind that we have got. This deal allows us to maximize all the opportunities of Brexit, from free ports to free trade deals, from cutting VAT on tampons to banning the cruel export of live animals. We can do exactly what we promised, take back control of our money, our borders, and our laws, and we can take back control of our immigration system and decide democratically who gets here in the interests of the UK economy and of every sector of UK industry and manufacturing. And of course, what this deal does is it gives, which is I think what everybody wanted in particular, certainly what I was trying to achieve, is it gives business complete stability and certainty about the arrangements that we have with our friends and partners in the EU as we make the transition in January, as we come out in January. And as I say, the best thing of all is it is done. It's the Blue Peter deal. Here's one I made earlier. And by the way, it has the support, just in case you're interested about the political backing for this deal, it has the support, the explicit support of every one of the 635 Conservative candidates at this election. Every one. And I hope the implications of that are clear to you for what I hope will happen in Parliament in just a few weeks. So all we need is 9 more seats, and we can deliver Brexit in January. If we get a working majority, we can get Parliament working for you, and we can then unleash the potential of the whole country and get on with our one nation Conservative agenda. And before I get on to that, I don't want to cast unnecessary aspersions on your next guest, but there is only one, forgive me, this is an election campaign. There is only one alternative to that one nation Conservative government that gets Brexit done, and that is a Corbyn-Sturgeon coalition. And what would Mr. Corbyn do if the Corbyn-Sturgeon coalition were actually to form a government? The only hard fact that has swum like flotsam from the Bermuda Triangle of Labour's Brexit policy is that they want more delay. More delay, turning 2020 into a year of 2 referendums. One on Scotland, which Nicola Sturgeon has repeatedly confirmed is the price that she will exact for her support. We don't know, by the way, what Jeremy Corbyn's position is on a referendum on the union with Scotland. Does he want to protect that union, or would he join Nicola Sturgeon in trying to break up the most successful political partnership of the last 300 years? I don't know. Who knows? Perhaps you could ask him. As for his position, Andrew Marr didn't have much luck. As for his position on the EU, it is positively mind-boggling. He wants to negotiate a new deal, at least spend another 3 months, another 3-month extension negotiating a new deal, and then he wants to spend a further 6 months asking the public to vote on his new deal in yet another toxic and divisive referendum campaign. And we don't even know what his own position will be. Will he actually campaign against his own deal? Will he try in the final reel to destroy his own contraption, like Alec Guinness blowing up the bridge he's built in Bridge on the River Kwai? Or will he urge his Labour colleagues to vote against his incomprehensible text, like the dying Virgil urging his friends to burn the Aeneid? Okay, slightly literary allusion there, but you know what I'm driving at. It's a mystery. Is he for Leave? Is he for Remain? Nobody knows. And one thing is clear. The Sturgeon-Corbyn alliance would consign this country to months, if not years, of dither, delay, discord, and division. And with every month of pointless delay insisted on by Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party, it's costing our country an extra £1 billion for nothing. We need to get Brexit done. We need to get Brexit done to end the uncertainty so that we, One Nation Conservatives, can get on with our programme of uniting and levelling up the country across the whole UK. Because if the potential of our country is enormous, then so is the injustice. Because there are some regions of our country that are now 50% less productive than London. I was proud to be mayor of this city for 8 years. It's the most productive region in the whole of Europe by some measurements. There are some parts of the country where people's lives are a decade shorter than elsewhere, where educational outcomes are vastly different. Now imagine if we could change that. Imagine if every child in this country had the same start, had the same encouragement at the beginning of their lives. Think of all the untapped talent in our country. I absolutely passionately believe that around this amazing country, talent, genius, flair are evenly distributed, but opportunity is unevenly distributed. And the answers to that problem, that fundamental injustice, are within our grasp. And our ambition is to unlock the whole of the nation's potential through three things: better infrastructure, better education, and technology. Not just to close the opportunity gap between rich and poor, but also between the regions of the country. And by analogy, you may remember what happened in London over the 8 years in which we were running it. We invested massively in transport infrastructure. There was a fantastic London Challenge education programme. Regions of the city, areas of the city that had been left behind, were able to participate in the growth and prosperity of the whole city. And you saw a contraction in the gap between rich and poor. You saw an increase in life expectancy in the poorest groups, and you saw a huge increase in their incomes as they were able to use mass transit to get to the opportunity areas. That's what we did in London, and that is what we want to do, loosely speaking, throughout the country. We think we can close both those gaps at once, not by decapitating the tall poppies, but by spreading equality of opportunity, giving everybody the same freedoms. And the first and most important is everybody should be able to walk the streets free from the fear of crime. And we need to stop our kids from being sucked into the county lines drugs gangs. We need safer streets. We need proper punishments for serious offences. And that means a government that not only funds the police, as we are, but also backs the police. And that's why we're not just investing in 20,000 more police officers, but backing them up with proper powers to do stop and search and tougher sentences for serious sexual and violent crimes. And what's the best way to stop our young people from being caught up in crime? It's to give, as I say, to give every child in this country the confidence that comes from an excellent education. So we're boosting per pupil funding so that each pupil gets a minimum of £4,000 in primary and £5,000 in secondary. We're putting huge amounts into special educational needs, £2 billion more into refurbishing, rebuilding our further education colleges, investing in skills for our country. Because it's not just universities, fantastic that they are. We must build the skills of our young people. And as we do that, we must also ensure, as I say, that they are able to exploit the opportunities that are being created. Literally, to find the work that this country produces conveniently and affordably. That is the secret. And that means superb transport communications. And that's why this government is embarking on an infrastructure revolution, because now is the time to make those investments with interest rates at a historic low, not borrowing for day-to-day spending, but obviously looking at what we can do to fund long-term investments. And I think you would agree that that is the right way for our economy. And yes, of course, that means supporting some really fantastic major projects. Crossrail, I was proud to help deliver when I was mayor, the tube upgrades, many other projects, but we now want to go on, as you know, with a Northern Powerhouse Rail, the West Midlands metro system, and many other things. Big ticket items we will do. But it also means investing in the simple improvements that I think so many people and businesses have been craving in transportation, modernizing roads and junctions that have become bottlenecks and sources of massive local frustration and economic inefficiency, putting in better bus services, which can make all the difference to towns and villages and rural communities, better cycleways across the whole country. I'm looking for answering nods here. I love cycleways. They're particularly successful in London, despite what the taxi drivers will tell you. They're wonderful things. We need better cycleways. And there's somebody nodding. And we also want every home, every business in the country to have the confidence and convenience that comes with gigabit broadband, 5G, 6G, mobile telephony. Now, you do all those things, and what you achieve is, as I say, uniting the country, raising productivity, education, infrastructure, technology, and you create the platform for growth. And if you create the platform for growth as government, as a one-nation conservative government, the market responds in two vital ways. If you have good transport and safe environment and good schools, then suddenly, as we found in London, here in Greenwich and elsewhere, the market will find that it can build thousands more homes on brownfield sites, superb, affordable homes, giving young people the chance to have the keys to their own property, which every survey continues to show is one of our most fundamental human instincts, and we will help with the expansion of part-by-part rent schemes to get people onto the housing ladder. Second, if you have safe neighborhoods and decent housing and a skilled workforce, good, reliable transport links, what else happens in the area concerned? You get business investment. You get confidence coming back into the areas that have felt left behind and who spoke, by the way, in that 2016 vote to leave the EU. You get jobs, and that is why you get regeneration. And that is why I think this country needs a government that believes in business and understands the vital importance of wealth creation, the need to support business, large and small, family business, cutting business rates. There have been 1.3 million businesses created since 2010 in this country. And Napoleon said we were a nation of shopkeepers. He was right. There have been more businesses created in this country than in France and Germany combined. And since 2010. And that is the balance and the symmetry of what I am proposing and what we are proposing with One Nation conservatism. That's what we want to do. It's a balance between fantastic public services and a strong, dynamic market economy. And I say, when people get up at the crack of dawn to get their business ready, when people take out a mortgage for a new venture, when people have the guts to put a new product on the market, we don't sneer at them, we cheer for them. And to make sure that the businesses of this country can continue to flourish. I'm today announcing a package of measures you may have seen, cutting business rates further. We'll have a big review of business rates, cutting business rates further, particularly for SMEs, to help, above all, to stimulate the high street. We'll cut national insurance contributions to make it easier to hire and to put more cash into the pockets of the low paid. We'll increase the reliefs for new buildings that businesses need, and this government will double, in order to help businesses innovate, this government will double funding for research and development to £18 billion in the next Parliament, the biggest ever increase in support for R&D. And we proudly back business across this country because we understand that it is they, you, who are creating the wealth that actually pays for the NHS. And by the way, because the NHS is the nation's priority and our priority, and because we believe emphatically in fiscal prudence, I hope you won't mind if I also announce today that we are postponing further cuts in corporation tax. And before you storm the stage and protest, before you storm the stage, let me remind you, Alan, this saves £6 billion that we can put into the priorities of the British people, including the NHS. We've already cut it from 28 to 19%, the lowest of any major economy, and that the alternative is Jeremy Corbyn, who would whack it straight back up to the highest levels in Europe. And that is the key difference between this government and the Labour Party under Jeremy Corbyn. It is not just that Labour would be an economic disaster for this country because they would delay Brexit yet again. They would simultaneously wreck this economy with a £1.2 trillion spending splurge that would be instantly rejected by the markets, that would massively increase not just this country's debt, but the cost of our debt, jeopardizing the government's balance sheet and ability to make future investments. And to pay for it, they would put up taxes on every household in the... Have a seat for a second. I'll be right with you. I'll be right with you. How long do you want me to go? Do you want me to stop now?
As soon as you can, Prime Minister.
I'll be right with you. I'll be right with you. I'll be right with you. And to pay for it, I feel obliged to make these important points, because to pay for it all, they would put up taxes to the tune of £2,400 a year. In fact, they are themselves so worried about a run on the pound that John McDonnell is actually going to impose exchange controls. And I invite you to imagine the only countries that have exchange controls these days are places like Angola, Zimbabwe, or, you guessed it, Venezuela. We cannot let it happen. That is true. We cannot let it happen, but that is the choice at this election. You can come with us and have a government that backs our armed forces as a power for good around the world. You can have Jeremy Corbyn, who has said he wants to scrap them. You can come with us and support police in their fight against crime, particularly against knife crime, or go with Corbyn and the Labour Party, who say that stop and search is inappropriate and oppressive. We want higher wages and higher skills. Corbynomics means higher taxes for everyone. And as I say, we know that the only way that we can have the investments that we need in our NHS and in fantastic public services is to have a strong and dynamic market economy. And the policy of John McDonnell is literally, as he says, to foment the overthrow of capitalism. Above all, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to wind up now. Above all, the choice is very simple. It is that we can go with a government and a one-nation Conservative Party that wants to unleash the talents and the potential of this whole country and get Brexit done, get on with our plans for investment in, as I say, 40 new hospitals that are being green-lighted as a result of the decisions taken by this government, 20 hospital upgrades, 20,000 more police, levelling up funding of education. Get on with that fantastic one-nation Conservative programme, because we're able to get Brexit done, the biggest increase in the living wage in memory, because we're able to get Brexit done, or we can consign this country to another year of dither and drift, and a year of 2 referendums in 2020. Well, I think we should give that madness a miss, John. And I want next year to be a year of productivity and growth, not a year of 2 referendums. And I don't want us all to wake up on Friday the 13th of December with a nightmare on Downing Street in the form of Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. What I want is to take this country forward with sensible, moderate, dynamic, one nation, but tax-cutting conservative policies. That's what I'm advocating at this election, uniting and levelling up across the entire country. I believe it's good for business, it's good for our country, and I hope you'll support it. Thank you all very much.
Now, we've got a few minutes for questions. First of all, we're going to take some media questions, which the Prime Minister will manage, and then we'll take some questions from the hall. But we've only got about 15 minutes in total, so please keep the questions brief. Prime Minister.
Well, thank you very much, John. And forgive me, by the way, I thought I had a while to go, but it was obviously the bit where I came to the thing about postponing the cut on corporation tax that caused you to. I hope you will understand it is the sensible, it is the fiscally responsible thing to do at the present time. It doesn't mean that we are in any way averse to reducing taxes on businesses, as I'm sure you understand. I'm going to go to Simon Jack of the BBC, then Sam Coates of Sky, and John Stevens of the Daily Mail.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Getting Brexit done, as you've promised, includes concluding a trade deal with the EU by next December, unless you choose to ask for more time by the end of June. Will you do that if necessary? Can you guarantee to this audience that the UK will never leave the EU without a deal?
Well, yes.
And just one, if I could also just add one corollary question.
Yes.
Would you encourage His Royal Highness the Duke of York to cooperate with US authorities about his knowledge of the activities of the late?
Okay, well, nice try there, Simon. On the substantive question about the deal. Look, folks, be in no doubt that people said that we couldn't get a deal first time round. We've got a great deal. It's a deal that allows us to come out of the EU as one UK to do all the things that we want to do. If you remember, they said that we couldn't change a jot or tittle of the text on of the backstop. They said we wouldn't be able to change a word of the withdrawal agreement actually in the time available, which was 3 months, and we did. And we got a fantastic new deal. We're able to get it through in just a few weeks. And if you look, Simon, at the detail of the forthcoming talks, the UK and the EU, as everybody knows fine well, are already in a state of grace as far as our tariffs and our quotas are concerned. We are in a state of perfect alignment and harmony. There is no other trade negotiation the EU has ever embarked upon with a third country where that has been the case. So I think we're off to a flying start. I see absolutely no reason why we should not get it done in the time available. And Sam Coates of Sky.
Sky News. CBI leaders disagree with you on your approach and your goals of Brexit and on your plan for immigration. If they, the CBI, worry that you're wrong on the biggest questions about our economy, how can you put to bed lingering suspicions that you just think you can F Brexit, F business? Or do you think that the CBI doesn't represent the true voice of business? And one more thing, did you share the nation's incredulity about Prince Andrew's account of his own behaviour? And as principal advisor to the Queen, what would you recommend she does about Prince Andrew?
Can I say, I don't think we are at different times.
Fantastic. Well, Sam, I've just got red-hot news from John, which is that he doesn't think that we are at variance on our plan for immigration. And by the way, I think that I have the highest regard for the the CBI and have spoken at many CBI conferences over many, many years, and I think you do a fantastic job. All I can say is that we will make sure that we already have a deal that I think protects the needs of British business and industry. And on immigration, look, remember, Sam, how we used to do it in London. I believe in having a society and a country that is open to talent. I can see the merits of doing that. We all see it in our everyday lives. But you also need democratic control. That's all we're saying. And an Australian-style points-based system would, I think, be of great, great value to this country in alleviating people's sense that their politicians are simply allowing immigration to be uncontrolled. And I do not think that unlimited and uncontrolled immigration is the right way forward for this country. The United States of America, for instance, has absolutely a huge country of immigration, has very, very strict controls on who gets in. Many, many other countries around the world have very, very strict controls, much, much stricter than in this country. We should be democratically accountable for our immigration policies. We should have control, but of course, we should ensure that sectors across the economy are able to continue to attract talent. And that is what we're going to do. And as for your other question, again, I don't, if you'll forgive me, I won't get dragged into commentary about matters concerning the royal family, if that's all right. John Stevens of the Daily Mail.
Prime Minister, if you're re-elected, will you commit to keeping Sajid Javid as your Chancellor?
My dear John Stevens of the Daily Mail, look, I'm going to give you an absolutely categorical assurance that I will keep Sajid Javid as my Chancellor. How about that? Well, and I think he's a great guy, and I think he's doing a fantastic job. And I'm proud to count him as a colleague. I'd be grateful, however, if you know, I don't have. Can we have not endless questions about the personnel at the top of the Tory party? I don't think I want to answer exhaustively about absolutely everybody.
Right. Can we now move on to general questions, please? If you've got a question, raise your hand. You should get a paddle and a microphone, and then please state who you are and who you're representing. And please, no questions on the royal family. That gets tedious after a while. Number one over there, I think. Can we have that first question, please, for the Prime Minister?
Hi, I'm Laura McCann, and I'm from Advance, which is the third largest software company here in the UK. Luckily and inspiringly, we actually have 30% of females on our board. However, as Caroline Fairbairn said, that isn't the case for many businesses across the country. And I was just wondering if you have any particular plans that you're going to build into policy to try and rectify that diversity, because as a young person looking ahead at my career, I would like reasons to stay in this country.
Yes, well, thank you very much. And we are doing a huge amount to break the glass ceiling where we can in boardrooms where there's I think companies now have to look at their payrolls and audit the pay that they give their employees. And actually, as a result, we've seen, I don't know whether it's as a result, but it's certainly helping. We're seeing a reduction in the gender pay gap, and there are more women now in the workforce than ever. And that's a great thing. And I think it boosts the productivity of the UK. If I may say so, we need to do more in one particular area, and that is childcare. And I think, and we will be bringing forward some stuff. I don't want to anticipate the manifesto. We will be doing more on childcare. Childcare, if you can get childcare right, you can do a huge amount of good, not just for families, but also for the productivity of our companies.
Okay, number 5, paddle, please.
Thank you. Prime Minister, John Laramie from Exeter College. Thank you for the work you've already done to lift up the funding for FE colleges. Will you commit over this Parliament to levelling up the funding to £5,000 for the 16 to 19-year-olds in colleges, as well as those younger people in schools? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry.
Please.
Go on. John, we'll take that away. I'm not certain that we're not already doing that, but I will come back to you on that if I may.
And finally, I think final George McIntosh down here. George, do you want to wait for a microphone's on its way?
Thank you, George McIntosh, Chairman of the CBI's SME Council. Prime Minister, will you protect the interests of the innovators and entrepreneurs in this country by holding on to entrepreneurs' relief?
George, I'm not going to make any more fiscal commitments at this stage, if that's all right. We've got lots of tax cuts and lots of ways we want to support entrepreneurs, but I'll certainly register your interest, your point with the Chancellor.
Okay, I think we've got time, because people have been agreeably brief, for a couple more questions. So can we have the gentleman over here who's had his hand up for quite a long time, Peter?
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. It's Nick Lakin from Kingfisher. We're in B&Q and Screwfix. I won't ask about business rates, although you did talk a lot about equality of opportunity. And I would say, first of all, it starts with people having a roof over their own heads. And when the average house price is 8 times the average wage, and the number of social houses built in this country was 6,000 last year, and there were 30,000 in 2010, I would question whether the Conservative Party's housing policy is enough about affordable housing for all of our workers. Thank you.
Nick, thank you. Actually, I think of the 220,000 homes we built last year, vastly more were affordable homes than 6,000. I mean, when you're talking about social housing, you may be talking specifically about homes for social rent or one particular model of tenure. I'd have to look at the figures that you're quoting. But don't forget that this government, the Conservative government, built more council homes in 1 year than the Labour Party did in 13 years, which is we are the party of building. And look, see monumentum requiris circumspici, as somebody said. Look around Greenwich. Look at what we were able to do by investing in transport infrastructure, by stimulating growth in areas on brownfield sites. We have got huge numbers of homes built, and I'm afraid that since I ceased to be Mayor of London, there has been a marked falling off in construction. But when Sir Edward, and I were here, there was a vast expansion in the number of properties being built, and we will do that, and we are doing that around the country. By the way, 220,000 figure that I quoted is the biggest number of houses homes built in this country for every year in the last 31 years except one. So we're going in the right direction, but we need to do more. And the secret is to tackle some of the obstructions in planning. We do have a problem, I think, with a monopoly by a very small number of, not a monopoly, but an oligopoly by a small number of developers, and we need to encourage more small developers. But we also need to be putting in the transport infrastructure that liberates development on brownfield sites and liberates great new housing developments across the country. And that is what we're going to do. If for instance, if you missed my message or it was interrupted, I didn't get to the crescendo. We want to unite and level up with better infrastructure, better education, and technology. And that is the way to deliver greater housing numbers. We did it in London, and we can do it across the whole country.
Right, we've time for 2 final questions. I think paddle 4 has been there for quite a while, and then finally paddle 5, and then that's it. I know you'd like the Prime Minister to stay all day and answer questions, but I think we have to. We have other political guests to come along and talk to us. So please, number 4.
Hello, Mr. Prime Minister. My name is Rihanna. I'm with the Patchwork Foundation here today. So my question is whether the Conservative Party have any plans to tackle youth disengagement in terms of politics, voting, and so on. What plans do you have towards that, especially amongst ethnic minorities? Another question from the team is whether the Conservatives will launch an independent inquiry into Islamophobia and religious discrimination. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you, Rihanna. We are indeed doing an independent inquiry into prejudice of all kinds. And on your point about youth disengagement, we are doing a huge amount as a government to encourage participation in politics and to encourage people to get involved. I'm delighted to say that we have, I think, huge numbers of people registering in this election, and that's a great thing. And I believe that young people have every reason to get involved now in their country's, our country's politics, because it is their future that we're talking about. And I'm very proud, by the way, of everything this government is doing to tackle the issues of climate change and the environment that are so important for young people. That's why we have a zero carbon target, a carbon neutral target by 2050. And again, I think our approach is the most effective one, because the way to reduce carbon emissions, the way to improve the environment, which so many young people care about, is not just to adopt a hair shirt policy of attacking business and attacking consumption, though we do consume too much of some things, but also to support dynamic new technologies. And it's the fantastic battery companies in this country, the wind turbine companies in this country, that are instrumental in reducing CO2 emissions, not just of this country, but of the whole world. And to get back to my main point, it's the private sector and its innovation in the private sector that is helping to drive that change. And we would not be able to tackle climate change if it were not for the engagement of business and the engagement of companies like your own. So that's why we also, it's precisely because we care about the environment that we also want a strong and innovative economy. And that is a point I would also make to young people.
I think we're going to have to finish. I'm sorry to disappoint the person I thought would be the last speaker, but what I would say is, if anybody has questions they'd like to feed into the Prime Minister, feed them into the CBI via our sort of policy desk over there. We'll make sure the Prime Minister gets them in, and I'm sure he'll respond to them. Now, I think many thanks to you for joining us here and sharing your views. This is a really crucial time in our country's history and development, Prime Minister, and I think we should show our appreciation to you for taking the time to come and see us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.